New Orleans, they have $2 billion. They need $11 billion just for the basic infrastructure.
I have to say this before I go. Saturday is the Omni annual meeting. I hope everybody will come, 5:30 at Mount Sequoia. This Thursday, the Mighty Earth Group that has been talking to us before, they're having an anti-pollution thing around Tyson's. They're going to do a rally on Emma Street in Springdale, the 300 block somewhere along in there. And it's going to be at 11 o'clock on Thursday, and anybody who can attend that in support.
Right on Emma Street in front of Tyson's building.
Yes. Now, just showing up will be worthwhile, won't it?
Yes, it will, yeah. Yes, it
Yeah,
will.
you don't have to do anything.
Don't have to do anything.
Make a speech or anything.
Now, there are people who volunteered to wear chicken suits, but nobody has to wear suits.
Well, I'll be damned, I'm pretty mad about that.
Guys, one last little quick announcement, as long as you make one.
Yeah.
Our next meeting in March is at Terry Trimble's house, and it will be on solutions.
Oh.
And we will get to see his home where he's put in a lot of, turning out to be zero energy usage in the end. So it'll be a fascinating meeting. Just watch for the announcement.
And the next announcement, give directions to his house.
All I know right now is on Mount Sequoia, but I'll do it. Yeah, sure.
We'll send it out. I would just like to
Hope he's in
respond
a
to what you said, and
bone,
that is,
civil
Thanks,
rights.
Gladys.
we don't, at this point, we don't have that national political will, and I think that it's extremely, it's a great sign that it's happening in small communities, because that's the only way it can happen at this point, is that, and that Fayetteville is making this effort, and that, I don't know how many other cities are also making this effort, and that's, that is a way to be a lever for the political will of the nation.
A lever of sorts, yes.
It has to be.
One of the next chapters is about food systems, and everything you can think of that has to do with food. It's not just soil and farmers, it's food processors, it's us as consumers. Everything is part of a food system. And so resilience in food system, tri-cycle farms. It's trying to feed the people who cannot have enough food to eat here in town. What I'd hoped to do with this third section was exactly what we're doing. It's like Dick just said, we've been talking about this for 30 years and we don't have the political will. Well, I was thinking before I had heard that perhaps we needed more ideas and brainstorming. But you guys have so many ideas.
No shortage, but here.
There's the CSAs and there's a farmer's market in relation to food systems. But here's something I do want you to hear. The Department of Agriculture, U.S. Department of Agriculture, describes the anticipated detrimental effects of climate change on most crops, livestock ecosystems, and human workers. See, even they know this. Even they. Okay. Rising temperatures and altered precipitation patterns will affect agricultural productivity. Yep. Livestock production systems are major contributors to greenhouse gas emissions and are also vulnerable to temperature stresses. Yep. Climate change will exacerbate current stresses from weeds, diseases, insects. On plants and animals, it also alter pollinator life cycles, which will impact all types of crop and livestock production. One more. Ecosystem services, meaning like flood control, that food systems depend on, will be damaged. Increased incidences of extreme weather events will affect food production around the world. So, why, if the Pentagon, the largest insurer or reinsurer in the United States, the world, Munich Re, and all of these different federal or international institutions know at climate change, why are we allowing someone to fool us? Why are we allowing that? Okay, it's a rhetorical question.
Because we vote for it.
Well, we did.
Okay. We are voting for it.
I have a favorite cartoon, and it's a globe, planet Earth, and it's wearing a T-shirt, and next to it is a human being, kind of stuck in his thumb, and the T-shirt says, "I'm with stupid."
And is the stupid one with that orange hair?
But Lolly, I want to ask you, the group, in relation to energy, didn't we a long time ago decide that if we could get solar and wind energy diversified to everybody. I mean, that is publicly subsidized, and everyone had their own solar collectors or plugged into a windmill or something like that, that would be the diversity and would be not enough for what we talked about earlier. It won't accomplish everything, but have we yet made an effort for solar and wind? We haven't really tried yet. So why are people criticizing?
Does it come down to power co-ops? Absolutely.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
The problem with solar and wind is the sun doesn't shine all the time, and the wind doesn't blow all the time. So, if you're gonna go to all solar and wind, you'd better have a breakthrough, and I'm saying a breakthrough, a huge breakthrough in energy storage.
Yeah.
And without that breakthrough,
Tesla's
we
lithium
will
battery.
never be able to go all solar and wind.
Well, when I talked about the Apollos, or the Marshall Plan, or the Manhattan Project, had we done that, we would have those batteries. Don't you believe our technology could have done it?
Yeah.
So we didn't really try, and we haven't tried yet.
World War II effort.
They're working pretty
Yeah,
hard
World War
on
II
batteries.
is
Right.
They're working pretty hard on batteries right now. They're making, any
But
company
there are
that
long-
can develop a better battery is gonna make a lot of money.
What about
But
Tesla's, what about
but
Tesla's battery?
Art, if you had taken that course on energy, you would see how far away we are.
Yeah.
That bad.
I mean, we're several light years away
Yes.
from having, energy storage
Right.
that would solve the problem.
Oh, I totally agree.
Okay,
Totally
now,
agree.
we may never get there.
Yeah, that's.
It's entirely possible we will never get there. So, you know, if you want a livable planet, you had better plan on going nuclear.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, folks, let's move on.
better leave the option of.
Whoa.
Let's move on. Come on. Moving along. There's just a little bit more I'd like to discuss, and it's kind of, again, a brain pump thing. One of the chapters is on education. How are we gonna do this that we've been talking about, going out and educating people? And in the chapter, it talks about what K through 12 does, it tells what higher education does, it tells what universities do. And it says, one of the things that stuck out in my mind, and I'm curious, you guys who are emeritus from our university here, it said it is 2/3 of entering college students now are interested in sustainability. Did you see that? Or maybe you've been retired long enough now you didn't have a chance.
Well, I would
to see
expect
it.
the University of Arkansas students to have that capacity.
True alma mater person, yeah. Well, I found that interesting, and how to educate others, share knowledge, those massive online courses that are free apparently, they had a number of different ways to do things. And so this last section was mostly to prime our brain, just to see if there's anything else we are already doing or that we can do. So that was the education.
My suggestion would be critical thinking and things related to it. We just don't think straight. We think with our hearts instead of our brains.
That's just what that chapter
And
said.
get away from the heart.
Yeah.
Think through,
When it needs
see
to be
what's actually gonna
thought,
happen.
when it needs to be thought.
not how you feel about it.
But at the same time, you know, there was a chapter on, do you know what the phrase beloved community comes from? It was Martin Luther King, way back when. And Rebecca Solnit said that to those people in New Orleans. They were part of the beloved community who came in and helped themselves. And then people from Texas brought their boats, and people from Alabama and Mississippi brought their boats in and helped. Well, there's two different areas that we have to have. We have to have the thinking, but we also have, it's like Marshall's book that you reported on, don't even think about it. Remember, so it's that combination, we have to have both those things, but we have to be able to see the clarity.
The second
So
we
where
define is
separate
social
them.
conscience, I think,
Yeah.
or altruism.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what this talks about a lot. How are we going to get there? Other than by, like now, listening to each other, interrupting each other, you know, saying what we really believe and think. This has been a great conversation, you guys, and I really appreciate it. And I was very fearful this would be totally boring, but yes, Dan.
And Art's pointing at the chapter on education. I challenge everyone here to join the PTA. We've got to get political every way that we can. And now the PTA is inviting all of us to be associate members. And so that we might assist the teachers directly, politically, I urge you to do that.
I agree with this. I like the way Art put it. We need to think with our heads rather than with our hearts. I think we need to change the educational system. I see some improvements. I see kids at elementary level that are now expressing some level of understanding, some concern for those ages about the environment, which is really good. But I still see a lot of opposition to being completely open to those things and leaving a lot of stuff to God's will. And I don't think we are in times to leave so many things to God's will. Whether you are a believer or not, that's a separate thing. I
There's
think
that phrase, God
we
loves them who
need
help
to
themselves.
do our job for our clients.
Lonnie, may I add to Alberto, or do you want to go to another topic?
Go ahead, we're almost done.
Okay, and that is that Fayetteville has a very fine organization advocating what you just said, and what Art just said. It's called the Freethinkers. And these persons want us to be rational. And once a month, they have a very fine meeting, not just about religion, it's about all topics.
Good bunch.
Does anybody have some more suggestions of what we have in Fayetteville or U of A relative to, water resiliency, transportation resiliency, housing resiliency, sustainability and education?
We're doing more and more to promote bicycles, for one thing.
Yes.
Really one.
Right.
And that's been ongoing for a good 10 years now, Walmart and
Right.
Greenway and all
There's a
that.
lot
Any
more
more
places to
organizations
go.
we should know about, like free thinkers, like Dick just said? Anybody?
Well, the university has quite a few. Anybody want to, Edward, one, I wrote you about him, his name is Professor Steve Luona.
Oh, yeah.
Luona.
Luoni.
He's in,
Luoni, yeah.
he's in charge of the design.
Yeah.
and
Community Design Center, CDC.
CDC. And he's very interested in all these issues.
Oh, big time on mass transit especially.
Yes, he is.
Train. One of the best things we could do for the environment around here is have commuter train between here and
He wrote a book on that, didn't he?
Bentonville
Art, it seems
down-
to me,
down here.
you told me.
Right, because we have a strip.
Oh, he's got a
city.
booklet
It would
and
be
everything,
perfect.
it's
Really
feasible.
need
From
one.
We got a perfect lineup for a train
That's
here.
right.
Yeah.
All the way
Yeah.
from,
Commuter rail.
Fort Smith,
Light rail.
all the way to New Mexico, up to Missouri.
4 communities all lined up, downtowns, right through the downtowns.
We could.
I mean,
Rails over
A&M is got great infrastructure, and it's underutilized.
What is it?
They're open to this idea, they'll share their rails,
Yeah.
they like the idea.
It's on Missouri.
Oh,
And
yeah,
they,
yeah, yeah.
they're gonna have to put in positive train control.
Well, that's one of the best things you can do for the environment around here, to make that happen.
Yeah,
What's something else, anybody? This is great.
and build the spur.
Rapid bus has been talked about a lot, and it's more feasible because it's a lot cheaper than rail. And that could happen soon, rapid bus connection between downtowns, Fayetteville, Springdale, Rogers, Penfield.
The artists in the area have done upgrades of the water pipes and the water systems with ecological signs, and I'm not.
That's education right there.
Yes, yes, I'm not sure who's doing that, but I do know there's, and then there have been several shows too, and down, underground art people.
That always helps us pull our brains forward. Anybody else? Yeah?
I'd just like to mention one thing, I kind of quibble with Art in that, I think heart is the wrong word that we want to avoid. I think heart is caring. I think what we want to avoid is mechanical thinking. Definitely we need critical thinking over mechanical thinking, but if we really love something, that we need that kind of caring to help inform our critical thinking processes. And in that sense, there are other things that are happening. There's a racial equity, social justice campaign that's happening. And also, Alberto was telling me about, what is that program you just joined, the nature?
Oh, the master naturalist.
Master naturalists,
Yeah.
things like that just help us to care, to take us to places that really help to inform us so that we care more deeply about the earth. I think these things are extremely important.
I totally agree with it.
There's a bioregional group in southern Missouri that has meetings on Ozarks bioregion. And if we don't have wildlands, we won't have a home. So all of that, like the naturalist program and going to the bioregional items and stuff like that. We can close up unless you've got some more suggestions along these lines. But I think there's one on page 310 through 12 are contradictions that we must face. So when we're talking about mind and
310?
heart, I think it's really important to bring these up, and these are at the very close of the book. Let me ask you real quick, before I do these, did you think this was valuable, what you've heard about this book? Was this valuable?
Yes.
Yeah. Was it valuable? Okay.
But
It
I
wasn't
do
just a
think-
repetition,
No, I
right,
think-
of
I
so
think
much that
it's-
we've already been involved in?
I think it's good for the clarity, but you said it in the beginning, we already kind of intuitively know a lot of this stuff. I think that's one reason when I read the introduction, it kind of said, I know
That's
this.
right.
Yeah.
For me, reading this book at the beginning was extraordinarily tedious, because it was very dense, and it was about so much that
Kind
we...
of academic.
And as I said, it was very academic, but it still had so much content. So listen to these contradictions as we're gonna go on into the future.
310.
We must, on page 310 is where I start. We must live in this world while building the next. We have to be thoughtful and judicious in where we invest our time, energy, and resources for change. Doing so may entail accepting certain hypocrisies, like we're driving cars. I have to drive 120 miles to come here and go back home.
Right.
But if we organized it better, you wouldn't, we could change that. You should be able to come here and train.
Yeah. I forgot to back in the boonies at Boxley Valley where the elk are, and the
Ride your horse and.
Yeah, doing so may entail certain hypocrisies and unsustainable choices, and being mindful of them as such as trade-offs for freeing up the time and effort needed to change the conditions that reinforce those unsustainable choices. Number 2, contradiction. We have no time to waste, yet we must take our time. Some of the challenges we face are truly dire. If we don't act boldly now, we may not be able to mitigate or even adapt to them later. This contradiction is perhaps most evidenced in the context of climate change, wherein rapidly changing tipping points will create unstoppable, reinforcing feedback loops. We must also avoid jumping at false, incomplete, or unsustainable solutions out of panic. Seems clear that building truly just and sustainable resilience comes down to dramatically shifting human behavior, values, and numbers, which by necessity require relationships, modeling, education, and time. Community resilience. Number 3, we have to simultaneously oppose and propose. Unfortunately, not everyone understands that we need to transition away from an economy that is dependent on globalization, resource extraction, fossil fuels, debt, and perpetual growth. Donald Trump's America First rhetoric earned him the votes of millions disaffected by globalization, but nationalism is not localism, and we're talking about relocalization. Nor is he a champion of renewable energy and conservation. Policies that reinforce our unsustainable paths, especially those that include large-scale infrastructure, long-term investment, simply, now here's where some of us nuclear might be disagreement, simply have to be opposed outright. The climate and social justice movements have grown their resistance efforts over recent years, and by all appearances intend to continue to do so. It really hurts my heart to see that they're talking about protest, a pipeline may be illegal, and everybody will be jailed. Okay, number 4, let me see how many there are. There are only 5, so here's one more. We must act both locally and globally Many people concerned about issues like climate crisis or global justice correctly point out that even the most sustainable and equitable community is deeply vulnerable to national global forces like climate change, war, human rights abuses. Thus, we must dedicate time and resources to advocating and organizing for the right regional, national, and international policies. If we spend all our time championing top-down policy solutions in capitals far from home without winning the hearts and minds of our neighbors, our victories will be politically compromised or fleeting. And we must, by necessity, organize around relationships. 5, here's the last one. We must have a clear vision and strategy while putting a premium on experimentation, feedback, and adaptation. Since 2003, Post-Carbon Institute has been tracking and supporting efforts to relocalize and build community resilience, usually driven by the passion of small groups of individuals. These efforts often fail to scale up or survive for more than a few years. We found that the most successful local efforts are ones in which participants take the time to build relationships, assess the resilience of your community. The assessments are really important, and there is a Post-Carbon Institute that has an assessment document that can be used, and you can look them up on Post-Carbon Institute. Assess the resilience of their community, identify the best areas for engagement, facilitate people-driven visions and planning. Truly resilient systems are dynamic and have tight feedback loops, have diversity and ability to adapt and transform. So that kind of is a synopsis of everything in the book, but it's also the practices and what we have to watch out for, the entanglements and in these opposing contradictions. Thank you very much. This was a great participation.
Okay, does anybody need an Ollie catalog?
Oh, I love you too. Thanks.
Down at that end of the table.
Yes.
Hello, Craig. Did you get some nut bread?
I did, thank you.
Pass it on. Pass it on
I
down
got
here.
it, well, I did, I
I
passed it
want my
on.
notebook back. Pass it
Oh,
around.
here's yours, Nick.
Preferably
There
without
it
the
is.
bread.
Thank you.
What? But,
pass it on.
I'm teaching 3 courses.
Don't blame me.
They're
My mother was a
somewhat
adopted child.
disjunct.
Hi.
One is on catastrophes, and I have a annotated bibliography.
Her mother was an only child.
If somebody
Well, I'm
wants,
just saying.
well, it's in this catalog.
Yeah.
Okay? I got it. I'm on the mailing list.
Somebody wants, I'm still working on the bibliography, but if somebody wants to,
What is it?
I think it's better that's passing this around.
Well, I'm gonna tell you that I have my new video camera,
Yeah, how's it working?
and
Well, I participate very much.
be ready to do a on-camera interview with you, except that I'm gonna have to order a memory card for it.
I got this
Order it.
1950s. In the back of my cookbook.
What do you call them?
And its title is Whole Wheat
The Radio
Cookery.
Shack. They got the best prices, and you don't have to drive all the way to
But
the
the one cookery is really old fashioned.
I don't think they've got I did a really heavy duty one.